Right. That'd be great. So let's talk about some of the questions that were submitted prior to the webinar. Let's start with the first one is, why do certain dispensaries try to preserve terpene content in products besides flower, keep the profile true to harvest? That's really trying to go with what we call whole plant. Tell us a little bit about that, Manny, because that's really key to making sure we get the right, not only the right terpenes, but also make sure we do have terpenes in the product.
Absolutely. So when you're dealing with dispensaries, particularly in the state of Florida, have to grow their product from seed to the end product when they sell you that product. And that's why it becomes expensive because of the harvesting processes that are required to not only preserve the terpenes, but the cannabinoid content and the flavonoids. And depending on those dispensaries and whatever fundings they may have and equipment they have, they're able to use certain processes like chromatography rather than ethanol extractions to preserve cannabis derived terpenes rather than trying to go through a third party or a third market in order to obtain botanical derived terpenes from fruit and florals to reintroduce into the product to make it that chemovar or strain name product that you're looking for. I always prefer the cannabis derived terpenes when it's true to harvest. However, it's not always possible, and a terpene is a terpene molecularly. The difference you might notice is the flavor profile, because if it's not cannabis derived, you might get a blueberry flavor or whatever other flavor along with those senses of aroma. Whereas cannabis derived terpenes are going to smell like cannabis, taste like cannabis, and have that more authentic effect, if you will, of cannabis.
Right. I think this is very important to try to preserve the plant as much as possible to get the best benefits out of it. The question that really came up was the patient has OCD and bipolar, and they're using medical cannabis to address it. And the really issue that really comes into place is sometimes their mood swings and their anger is getting a little bit, let's just say, worse. Is this because of the cannabis? Now, I'm not the medical doctor, and I really have not met the patient. So I really can't say whether it is or it isn't something that is due to cannabis. I can tell you that obviously, if you have a particular condition like OCD or bipolar, it does get worse, and the cannabis does help it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to either take more cannabis or be able to adjust your dosage. If the cases of is getting worse, I think that it's really a key of making sure you get the right. You experiment a little bit with the dosing and also with the terpenes. Your thoughts, Manny?
I completely agree. This is one of those cases where terpenes really play a significant role. And as you
Hmm.
and Amy described in the presentation, there's certain terpenes that have certain or different effects. And it's never going to be just one terpene that you're looking for. It's going to be a recipe of terpenes, if you will, that make that difference. So if you're using something for the OCD or bipolar, looking for something to help you relax and calm down in the evening, you're going to want to try to find something with linalool and myrcene or both to help you with that. But if you take that profile during the day when you're trying to be awake and concentrating, using linalool and myrcene or both, that can exuberate, make things worse. So my advice is daytime products. I would look for a limonene with maybe a little bit of pinene for short-term memory and focus, and then transfer over into an evening product with more linalool and or myrcene, and that may make the difference. It's very possible that it can make it worse in the sense short term, and because you're using the wrong terpenes. But if you find that right recipe, it should make things very balanced and very easy. It is a journey, and I would highly recommend journaling where you're buying your products and what products you're buying so you can compare.
And also, I think in this particular case, a consultation would be important because I think that, again, dialing in those terpenes are going to be key and also getting the dosing right. And this is where working with your local dispensary can really help you just be able to nail it with respect to the dosing profile.
I would even go as far, Mark, to suggest that you may want to shop at dispensaries that have ratio-based products. The
Yes,
difference
yes.
between a ratio-based product and a strain name, as we all know it, or a chemovar name, is that it's consistent. It is a specific recipe or a specific formulation that the dispensaries have that is consistent time and time again. Whereas if you're using a strain name or chemovar, then that product may change, and it may be 1 to 3% difference, if even that much, and but it has a significant impact on how it affects you. So I would
Hmm.
go by ratio base and then branch off from there for similar and or like products.
Sure. Good comments. Next question is a very interesting one. It says, could you talk about cannabis use with hereditary spastic paraplegic (HSP)? I should point out, doing some research on this, preparing for this, this is very similar, and the conditions that we're trying to address are very similar to what I call epilepsy, where people are having these spastic conditions, where we have found things like beta caryophyllene, things like myrcene really help a little bit with that. Have you had any experience with this, Manny? And if you haven't, tell me what your thoughts are about using cannabis for example, epilepsy, because a lot of the cannabis recommended for this particular condition also can help with epilepsy.
Absolutely. I've had a few, not with specific HSP. Um, just to be candid, my son has epilepsy and I deal with neurological issues, and he has a medical marijuana card. I
Mhm.
found in the few clients that I work with that higher CBD products may work better. However, I do understand the need for THC because the THC is going to be more of a rapid effect. So I would suggest a 1-to-1 or a 50-50 CBD to THC product. Um, Myrcene does work very, very well for this. However, you don't have to inhale it. You could use it in a tincture, you could use it in a gummy, in different areas such as that. If you do decide to use the higher CBD route, as I suggest, do keep in mind that it can take about 2 to 3 weeks to see significant impacts or significant effects for that to subside,
Mhm.
because it takes a while for that CBD to load up in the system.
Yeah.
But it's only been a couple.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Next question is there a terpene to relieve dizziness? I'm not aware of one. Your thoughts, Manny?
Not quite dizziness as defined in by itself. If you're dealing with vertigo or something to that effect, I found that a 1-to-1 with moderate myrcene and or linalool and B-caryophyllene, and it worked very well. However, again, I'm not a medical professional, and if you're dealing with consistent dizziness or vertigo, I would highly recommend speaking to a physician or a medical professional first and then figuring out what the cause is so we can treat the symptoms of that cause.
Yeah. Dizziness is kind of you hit the nail on the head. It's kind of a broad topic. So we really need to be able to nail that down to come up with a specific answer. But yeah, I think that defining it, and again, this is another case where a consultation would help quite a bit.
Absolutely. And you don't have to schedule an appointment for those at a dispensary. You can walk in and say, hey, look, I have questions. They have consult rooms for privacy if you so choose so. That's required by state law. And you can walk in and you may have to wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes for a knowledgeable guide or bud tender or whatever they may call themselves. And they'll be happy to sit down with you and discuss that with you.
Great. Let's take a look at the next question. What are the best terpenes for chronic pain? Does it matter where the pain is, and can I use it long term for chronic pain? And some related questions that we get is what is the best for muscle pain? And also the other question is how can I get pain relief with with the high versus without the high? What makes the difference and I need to work? I think you hit one of the things you hit nail on the head. I have chronic pain. I have 7 herniated discs in my neck, and I have to work. I have to doing the webinars today, so I really can't be high to be able to do that. And I think that's a very good question. Your thoughts on this, Manny?
Yeah, this is one that I deal with quite often. It's multifaceted, and because of that, it's actually quite intriguing to figure out what would work for you. So, my favorite for chronic pain as an analgesic is going to be caryophyllene.
Hmm.
Um, One of the reasons I like it so much is because it works really good as an analgesic and anti-inflammatory, but it's also the only known terpene as of right now that actually reacts with your receptors, your CB1 and 2 receptors, such as cannabinoids do. So I would highly recommend that first and foremost. Then I always go by daytime or nighttime. Limonene, daytime, myrcene and or linalool, afternoon, evening, rest time.
Hmm.
Now, myrcene is going to allow more THC to get through the blood-brain barrier and get to your brain, so you will feel more euphoric and more sedated. However, you're getting the effect that you're looking for, but you only want to use that at nighttime. As far as with and without the high, there are some sacrifices. As you build up a tolerance, you may be able to use a 1-to-1 without any euphoric effects that allows you to work during the day. And again, I will look for limonene and or pinene along with caryophyllene for the daytime and then the evening time. If you want the high at that time because you're not working and you can relax and digress, myrcene and or linalool with a high THC product, and B-caryophyllene for the evening times. Those will be
Mhm.
my favorite choices.
Great. Good comments. I think that's excellent comments. It does work very, very well for chronic pain. I can tell you that if I'm not using medical cannabis, my chronic pain is when I wake up in the morning can be a 7 or an 8, and I'm able to use medical cannabis and bring that down to a 1 and keep it there not only during the day, but I've also been able to figure out how to keep it there at night so I can sleep. So it is effective. Let's jump into
One
the
of the
next
other
question.
things, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Mark, I have one more follow-up on that is that also keep in mind that you can use products in tandem. So if you're having that pain immediate and you need
Good
something
point.
effective right then and there, like Amy said in the presentation, use an inhalant, whether it's a vape or flower. And then you could use a topical and then a sublingual as well. So you're using three products to tackle this throughout the day. And the reason a sublingual or edible or oral would be so important is because you wouldn't have to step out from work or be disturbed from work, having to step out and vape or inhale a
Mhm.
product every hour and a half to 2 hours. You could take this ingestible, if you will, and that will allow you to last throughout the day. And the more you use CBD, the more less inflammation you'll have. Therefore, you won't need as much product throughout the day, but you got to load that in your system for about 2 to 3 weeks.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point. Let's jump into the next question. It says, I have anxiety, depression, tremors, and insomnia. What terpenes would be the best choice for me? Now, we covered some of this, not all of it, some of it when we talked about insomnia and anxiety. Anxiety and depression kind of fit together. Tremors go back to the whole idea of the same thing with epilepsy. Here's some recommendations. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yes, absolutely. So this is when a consultation, as most of these questions would be most beneficial to have, because the first thing I would ask is which is your most prominent issue? And then I would try to dissect it a little bit to see if maybe your depression's coming because you're so anxious, or you're not sleeping and have insomnia because you're so depressed. But these are all questions I don't know right now. In that instance, I would definitely recommend certain products for certain times of day. If you're working, try to use CBD with linalool. Not so much myrcene. Myrcene might weigh you down a little bit too much where you want to go to sleep, but linalool will relax you. And if you're not familiar with linalool, linalool is like, or it comes from lavender amongst other products, and that's what they use in those diffusers or when you go to a spa to help you relax and digress. Is linalool is being inhaled by you and having that psychotropic effect. So if
Mhm.
you're dealing with anxiety, linalool will work for evening, nighttime. Limonene would work for the daytime. Depression, limonene works very well for that without the anxiety. Tremors, myrcene and linalool, and then insomnia, myrcene and linalool again.
Right. And I should point out that one of the products that is available is something called full spectrum oil, or RSO, Rick Simpson oil. And that is a whole plant product, meaning it has all the terpenes and basically it's made from the whole plant. That might be a good solution for this particular case because you're trying to cover so much ground. But be careful of RSO because I refer to it as the 151 Bacardi of the cannabis business. It's very, very strong. Is it your thoughts on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is the most potent product, if you will. However, there are dispensaries out there that have formulated into a tincture, so it's more fluid and easier to manage. And they
Hmm.
also have RSO or FSO out there that's a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's 50% CBD and 50% THC. It's not going to have that much of a psychoactive effect or euphoric effect on you. And
Hmm.
again, as you build up your tolerance, you may be able to use that in small doses. If it's a tincture, about a quarter of the dropper. If you're using it as a concentrate, you want to take something about the size of a grain of rice. However, please, please, please do not inhale RSO as it has
Yes.
all the products of the plant and can cause inflammation of the lungs and can actually cause damage.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something that's really there. That's something that's really key. Let's move to the next question and see what's there. Can cannabis help to regrow bones? That's an interesting question because when I had my knee replacement, I did use cannabis, and I do know that it does help with the healing process. Now, I don't know if it's going to regrow, but I do know that it will heal, and it'll help to be able to replace some of the bone that has been damaged or taken out from the operations. So I wouldn't necessarily use it as a growth product, but I would use it as a healing product. Your thoughts, Manny?
I would suggest the same, Mark. When I have questions like this, what I like to suggest is that cannabis helps the internal pharmacy of your body and helps create homeostasis within your body so your body can do its healing on its own. Cannabis is not going to substitute anything that your body can already do besides help your body do it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good comments. Next question is an excellent question. It's not that any of these questions aren't excellent. This is a really one we hear quite a bit, I should say. Terpenes are essential in selecting a product. Why are COAs so difficult to obtain? They should be online. Store personnel are clueless. I know that many dispensaries are working very hard to get their COAs online. One of the reasons why they're hard to find or to get is because this is a botanical product, and each plant has a different profile. Even though it's the same family, it'll have something that's slightly different. So if you want to have an accurate COA, then you need to have basically COAs for each batches of products that are out there. And I know being able to try to keep up with that is somewhat difficult. Although I do know some of the really well, let's just say some of the top dispensaries work very hard to be able to put their COAs online. You've been involved in that, haven't you? Haven't you, Manny?
I have. I've been through that process and I understand your pain. Um, Pretty much all the dispensaries are starting to turn to that. I remember when I started out in Florida in 2018, terpenes weren't even really talked about, and it's just recently in the past 2 years that they become more prominent. And as such, dispensaries are trying to get at least the top three to top five terpenes on their websites and or having the COAs readily available. That said, every dispensary in the state of Florida by law has to provide a COA upon request for any product they're selling at that time. If they don't have it, then or if it's the staff that's not able to obtain it, I would recommend tactfully just submitting a request to the company. You can find all their contacts online, and it'll help them understand that us as patients, because I'm a patient as well, need that information to shop effectively for our medicinal product.
Mhm.
That being said, you could usually find a QR code on the product and you can scan that and find it that way, depending on the dispensary as well.
Right, right. Next is an interesting question. Are terpenes the same as nutrients? Terpenes really are not as, let's just say nutrients and terpenes are two different things, although they are similar. Nutrients tend to get into a lot of things like vitamins and a lot of those things that they go beyond the lipid profiles that the terpenes and cannabis really recommends or actually addresses. So the answer is similar, but they are not really nutrients because they really don't contain a lot of the, again, a lot of the vitamins and some of the other things that we take a look at when we do look at nutrients. Your thoughts, Manny?
I would agree. It's kind of a trick question in my part because when I look at that, when you're consuming cannabis, you're supplementing your 2-AG and anandamide, your natural
Mhm.
endocannabinoids that your body produces. So in that respect, yes, it would be, I guess, considered a nutrient in my eyes. However, terpenes pretty much drive the bus of the cannabinoids. You can take THCA or heat it up and turn it into Delta 9 or CBD in the same respect as solo cannabinoids singularly. However, it's the terpenes that give it that entourage or synergistic effect that makes the difference. And one of the metaphors I like to use is that spaghetti and meatballs, you would pretty much survive off of just regular spaghetti and meatballs without any sauce or spices or anything like that. But it's the sauce, the red sauce, the vodka sauce, the Parmesan cheese, the oregano, all these spices you put on it that makes it truly a spaghetti and meatball dish that you enjoy. And that's what terpenes are to cannabis. It's what truly drives the bus and creates the effect that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. Manny, looks like they have a question for you. It says, is cannabis grown indoors differently from growing outdoors? And how do we know which way it was used from dispensary products? Now, here in Florida, all cannabis Florida licensed dispensaries are required to grow indoors. And that's then for a number of reasons to be able to protect and worry about mold in mold, pesticides and that type of thing. And more importantly, they're concerned about cannabis just going into the wild and being grown in ditches and things like that. But what is the difference between, are there differences between indoor and outdoor grown cannabis?
So there's subtle differences. If you're like you said, Mark, everything is grown indoors in the sense that it's in a facility. However, the facility could be a greenhouse with the translucent glass that sunlight could get through, and that would be considered outdoor. Um, it's kind of a tricky question because I personally prefer outdoor cannabis. As cannabis grows, it generates phytocannabinoids as opposed to our internal endocannabinoids. Phyto suggesting that it's coming from a light source, or that's how it's generated. So the more sunlight it can get, that natural sun rays, the more beneficial. However, if it's outdoor, then it's susceptible to insects, birds, and other predatory insects or animals to damage it. So when they have it indoor, they usually have it with the translucent glass where sunlight can get through. And let's say, knowing Florida weather, it's cloudy or day and then the sun's in and out. They also have indoor grow lights to supplement for when it's cloudy to kind of balance things out. You can know the difference between dispensaries because typically indoor grow will be more expensive because it's in a more controlled environment. It requires more attention, where outdoor grows are not so much tended to, if you will. But they are both just as good. It depends on what you're looking for, what you're expecting from the product, and what you're trying to alleviate.
Yeah, I think indoor grows give you more consistency between batches of products. Where outdoor grows, obviously you're dealing more with nature and again the variability of nature. It's there.
But then here's the other downside too. If you have an indoor grow and then you end up having an infestation, let's say you get the gnats or the flies, your whole grow goes down because it's
That's
all
true.
indoor. So you got to be very cautious, and it's
Yeah.
very expensive to maintain.
Yeah, there's a yin and yang with everything in life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a good comment. Next question is, what happens if you dry the buds too much in a grow? If it feels harsh when smoked, is it causing lung damage? I'm going to start with the second part. If it's feeling harsh when you're smoking it, I would be very careful. In fact, I would probably back down from using it because your lungs are telling you that there's something that's wrong. Now, the question is, I don't know if you can dry the buds too much. Can you?
There is such a thing as drying out too much. I like to throw a little, maybe 58 to 62% humidipack. You can order those online and with
Yeah,
my flour if I'm not going to use it right away to maintain. Typically, you'll know because when you go to grind it or break it apart, it turns into what I call pixie dust. It kind of just
yeah,
lofts up in the air a little bit. Sometimes that could be a good thing. That could be terpenes breaking away or otherwise. But if it just breaks, it doesn't stick together very well. All the terpenes have evaporated. It's over dried, and it may not be as effective. If it feels too harsh, that could be double edged. So it could be because you're short on the joint or you're using a very short pipe. So the metal or whatever's in it is also heating up. It could be byproducts left in the flour, depending on where you got it. If you got it from a dispensary, we like to trust that with the COAs, it's all going to be good for you. However, there is such a thing, and if it's too dry, it's going to heat up faster. And it's
right.
usually that heat that's causing that irritation and that harshness, not so much the product itself. So I'd be cautious, but it's probably, yes, it could be dried out too much.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, and this is where you really got to pay attention to the dispensary you're getting it from, and of course with the profiles that they're giving you. That's really, really out there. Um,
Now,
Go ahead.
I was just going to suggest I've had that effect with vaping. I've had vape cartridges or
Yeah.
pods that are very, very smooth, and then I put on another one with the same temperature setting, and it's very, very harsh. So it could be the formulation, it could be certain terpenes, it could be whatever the formulation might carry that's creating that. I always suggest lowering the heat, maybe on a lower setting, it might be more beneficial. And if not, remember, you could always go back for accountability to your dispensary and complain. Say, hey, this is what this is doing. I bought it as a medicinal. Most dispensaries will allow you to keep the product and give you a credit, allowing you to replace it with either the same or like product.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point. Next question is, what is the best terpene for people with social anxiety? I'm worried about making it worse. Really, really key is as you're using medical cannabis, you want to be able to test it before you go into go out in public. In other words, as part of your dosing process, find out what the dosing level is, find out the products that work, and find out what really works best for you. And I'm trying to say that because I would make sure that I feel comfortable at home before I really go out And again, you don't want to make it worse. And by being able to test it at home, you'll be able to find out if it does, it doesn't do that. But Manny, talk about some of the terpenes here.
So absolutely. When you're discussing social anxiety, I'm going to start with daytime because you want to go out during the day, go shopping, or spend time with friends or whatever it may be. And of course, there's the nightlife as well, which I'll get into. But my first choice would be limonene and B, caryophyllene. Limonene being your primary terpene at the top of the list, caryophyllene being second, and then pretty much anyone's afterwards except for pinene. I would definitely avoid limonene with alpha pinene. That may very likely induce your anxiety and make things worse, especially socially. Now, if you're looking for the evening time, I wouldn't necessarily go with myrcene, although that would be probably the choice of most of the guys or bud tenders,
Mhm.
because that does work. However, it's going to have a couch lock, very sedative effect, and that may not be what you're looking for because you want to be social. So I would recommend linalool and caryophyllene with those instances. Now, if you're just at home and you can't digress from your social anxiety, that's when I would go with myrcene and then caryophyllene on top of it with it. So that way you can get the rest that you're looking for.
Sure, that's there. Good comments. Next question is, I'm having a hard time finding something that will curb pain from a cancer tumor without mind numbing effects. Does it exist? It really cancer is really a tough situation. There's a lot of different kinds of cancers. It depends on how far along it is. And again, some cancers can, because again, cancer is something that's fundamentally eating your body, is the best way of putting it. So really being able to find out the right dosing level, the right products and the right terpenes are really, really important. It's not going to cure cancer. It will put it into remission, but it's not going to cure it. You never get over, let's just say you can never cure cancer. You can only put it in remission. But I think you can potentially get to a point where you don't have the mind-numbing effects, but that really has a lot to do with dosing. Your thoughts, Manny?
I would 100% agree with you there, Mark. And this is one of those things where I will 100% say, yes, it does exist. However, the caveat is it exists individually for each person. You kind of have to find it on your own, unfortunately.
Right.
But the advice I can provide to you is that the THC that you're using with the mind-numbing effects to give you relief can be substituted with CBD. So if there's a time, and for most clients that I deal with or work with, they always have a time where they're not using a THC product to alleviate their issues because they have to work or they have to spend time with their kids or their spouse, whatever the situation may be. And in those instances is when I say 100% take a high CBD product, something to the ratio of maybe a 10-to-1 or a 12-to-1 ratio product where it has no psychedelic effect or euphoric effects. And although you may not find the relief that you're looking for by taking that product, the more you continue to do that and build a regimen with that, the more you will start to see relief in the CBD product without the euphoric or mind numbing effects. And you'll start backing off the THC products.
Right.
So it's
And
kind
that's a
of
good
like a little
point.
seesaw.
Yeah, and that's a good point. CBD will help you get rid of those mind-numbing effects. I don't think that's really well known, and hopefully we're getting that message out, and it'll help in this particular situation. Let's take a look at are there any other questions that have come up, Lee? Guess we've run through the pre-questions. We didn't really have any questions during the webinar itself. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Hopefully you got something from this, and our goal is to really help you get your life back. If just one person gets help from this and they can get some relief, we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, which is to help you be able to have a better quality of life. I should point out that, again, you'll be getting a follow-up email that'll give you give you a link to a video so you can watch this again, the presentation, and also the backup information like the terpene profiles, the sheets that you saw, some of the tables that are there. Your final thoughts, Manny?
Yeah, I'd just like to leave everybody with a thank you for attending and being with us on this journey. I'd like to point out, please make sure you journal everything down. Do not feel rushed when you go into a dispensary. Before COVID, there were consultations left and right. Everybody enjoyed it. And post COVID, that kind of faded, but it's still available. Carve out a time where you could give yourself 20, 30 minutes to go to a dispensary, have a discussion with one of the guys there. I can almost promise you, you will enjoy it and get enlightened and find products that will be better useful to you rather than just shooting in the barrel. You can
Sure.
always find me on the bluntjoint.life for a discussion, informative only. As I mentioned, I'm not a medical professional, but I am a subject matter expert. And Mark, I'd like to thank you for having me and sharing this time.
Well, thank you, Manny. And again, I do want to point out, check out the Blunt Life, the check out your website because I think that's going to be really. Let me back up. Check out your website because I think that's really going to be important. I think a lot of folks can get a lot from that. Um, Next week, our webinar is going to be on Tuesday, not on Wednesday. So it's going to be Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. It's on exploring cannabinoids, and that'll be one that's also very popular and helps you understand again the cannabinoid side of the cannabis product. I want to thank our moderators tonight, Lee and Leah. Great job as usual. They're the ones in the background that really make this happen. And I really want to thank them. Without that, we wouldn't be here. And also for Alyssa Quintero coming up with the idea of this. And more importantly, thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate your attendance. And again, fill out those surveys. We'd like to hear from you. And more importantly, join us next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend and stay safe. And hopefully we can help you get your life back.